Good morning, everyone. I'm on my way to work, and I thought I'd share something with you. When we think about the gospel of Christ, or salvation, death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, it is not only people know it well, but people don't use it as a formula. It is the most powerful formula, the idea of the cross, the idea that Jesus brought all the sins to the cross and defeated death. And then the idea that in baptism that we are following him. Romans 6 says, those of you who are buried with Christ have put on Christ. And then and only then do we have the right to take part in his resurrection. And on an everyday basis, whatever is no good in our lives should be put to death or put down. Sometimes you can't finish it off, but I use this example of Captain Jack Sparrow when he was in the quote pirate hell, when he was in Davy Jones' locker. He has arguments with the copies of himself that are in his head. And he's fighting over a peanut, and he's saying, how did we get into this mess? And he shoots himself. He's like, that kind of thinking is what got us into this mess. And in Romans, Paul talks about the war between the spirit and the flesh. And my flesh does things I don't want. And he talks about putting to death the old man. And that is what the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, the plan of salvation, most powerful formula on the place of the planet. You resurrect good things. And that's the thing that this ties into is if Satan wants you, when there's a bad part of yourself, he wants you to be defensive of that part of yourself so he can keep the stranglehold on you. And he talks badly to you, or he makes you feel good. He says, if you just stay here, you can feel good. You want to fight this battle, but you're gonna slowly get strangled. And that's why we need to resurrect the good in us and put to death the evil. And there's a misconception and a failed judgment in our culture that says, oh, don't judge anybody. So then you don't have the ability to judge, and you don't want to feel bad, so then you're being strangled. In order to fight the battle, whether it's if you start a battle like this in your body, let's say your body has toxins. If you start to put the right things in your body, you will not feel better right away. That is a false idea. These toxins, your body will store things in the safest place it can in your body. And when you start to put something right in your body that's going to eject that, it starts a battle. It starts a battle. And that it will always get worse before it gets better. Not always. Sometimes it does get better. Sometimes less legitimate. Most of the time, if there's a long period where something hasn't been done correctly. And I'll be 40 in several months. And I've had to do physical therapy on my own body. And even spiritually, God has done spiritual therapy with me in places where I was broken. And it's a real question to pursue this and seek diligently things that you're good at and resurrect and raise up those things, and also seek diligently things that are not good. Don't be afraid to look at something that is ugly in your character and work on it. And don't be afraid to let your friend or someone who loves you do the same thing. Now, in our social system, it is very stupid to expose your faults, because people will they will basically write on your forehead, oh, that's this person. That's an ignorant way to judge. Now, 1 Corinthians 2 in the end of the chapter says, the spiritual man judges all things, and himself is judged by no one. That means that if you hold yourself to a higher spiritual standard, it doesn't really matter And if you're present with the understanding that God is an omnipotent being who is very powerful, who will judge the world, but also He's your loving Father. He's your loving Father who loves you and He guides you gently. If you accept it. A lot of times we're doo-doo heads and we're like, no, I'm not going to do this. And God's like, He puts these out for us, the most straightforward and peaceful path, and we don't do it. And then when some punishment comes to us, we're mad at God, and God's like, look, this is what I set out for you, and you chose the opposite of it. So we need to return to God with our hearts and make our hearts clean. In electricity, protons, I think, are the positive energy, and they crash into electrons, which are known as the negative, and disperse them, and that's what makes power. People are afraid of negative feelings and negative energy and fear. And people think, oh, Rick gets scared easily. No. Well, yes, I acknowledge it, then I galvanize and I look right at it, or I address it how it should be. Or if it's a serious thing, like, a freight train coming, I get out of the way. So our senses have been deadened for a reason, so that people lack judgment, they lack hope, and all these things are possible, but it's put through the door that a lot of people shy away from. They're like, oh, I will feel bad if I go in this direction. Yes, but it's a battle you need to fight for your own soul and for the souls of others, and it's important. And God is drawing you to it. Just have courage and be strong enough to do it, and you will see the fruits of it. Anyways, I love y'all.